What's going on, everyone? We are back with a brand new video and came across this video, the audio of which you'll hear from Rasheed Wallace, and I saw it on the Pistons Talk Instagram page, so I don't know if it. I know he's got a podcast, so I'm assuming this may be where it originated from. But at any rate, the subject came up of what Shaq and Draymond Green had to say on the big podcast, and where basically Draymond Green said that the 2017 Lakers would smoke, not the 2017 Lakers, I'm sorry, the 2017 Warriors would smoke the 2004 Pistons. And so Rasheed Wallace obviously heard those comments and offered his rebuttal, if you will, to that. So I'm going to let you hear what Sheed had to say about Draymond Green's take that the Warriors would smack around the Pistons.
We would have beat the shit out of them. And I'm going to address that because Draymond said this bullshit.
Draymond would have killed you.
You crazy as
Man,
fuck.
you can't guard Draymond Green.
He said this bullshit the other day on him and Shaq's podcast. We would have beat the shit out of them because, for the simple fact, they couldn't match up with us at any position. Steph's not a defender. He would have had to guard Rip. How many screens Rip coming off of?
Whatever the max you can have in the game.
Or whoever they would have tried to put at point. Whoever their point would have been too little for Chauncey.
They'll put Clay on him. Clay 6'7". You say
Okay,
Clay
so
can't guard Chauncey.
who's going to guard Tay?
Kevin Durant.
Wiggins. KD.
If it's 2017,
Oh,
it's Kevin Durant.
KD.
Yeah.
They're not used to the physicality.
Rules are we playing under?
It
Old
don't
rules or
matter.
new rules?
It don't matter. It
The
can
new
go.
rules, y'all can't do that.
But here's the thing: the new rules, they can't fuck with us neither because we have more guys with a greater skill set.
All right, so there you heard the comments of one Rasheed Wallace, and to sum it up, he thought that the Pistons would beat the crap out of the Golden State Warriors, and he offered obviously his reasons on why, and here's kind of my take on it. And it's easy on the surface level to say that the Warriors, with their shooting proficiency, with the shooting triumvirate of Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant, they would be able to overwhelm the Pistons, and they'd make easy work on them. But not so fast, my friends. Sorry. Sorry about that. What we have to remember is a couple things now. One, the Pistons, that 2004 team, was an extremely talented defensive basketball team. And even in that era that they played in the early 2000s, which was one of the most defensive eras, they stood out even amongst that, considering some of the defensive efforts that they put on. Routinely holding teams in the 70s. And if you will recall, I want to say even when they played the Spurs, there were games where it was the teams were in the 60s in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, this was a team that had great prowess on the defensive end, and I think they had the bodies to be able to deal with a Klay Thompson, a Stephen Curry, a Kevin Durant. Now, does that mean they would absolutely shut them down? I would doubt that, but I'll say this. When the Boston Celtics got to be, and I don't want to say 90s defense per se, but they got to play a style of defense that was a little more reminiscent of what we saw back in the day. We saw what that was able to do and how that was able to stifle Kevin Durant from an offensive standpoint. So we do have some evidence of how it would at least work on Kevin Durant. And I think the physicality that those guys would bring, the thing about it is it may not affect you in the first or second quarter, but in the third and the fourth quarter, having to fight through all that, and it makes you tired. Those three-pointers, they're a lot harder to get off because you're tired, because having to deal with the physical force of a defense, it makes things a little more difficult to shoot those jump shots. So they would have that to deal with. And remember, they beat the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, or or when they had that ill-fated super team with Karl Malone and Gary Payton. Beat them up 4-1. And I think another thing that they have working for them is, once again, one of their strengths is one of the Warriors, the dynastic Warriors, was their main weakness, which was on the interior. So, they've got a Rasheed Wallace, a Ben Wallace. They've got the big bodies in there that would give them problems, both limiting them on the offensive glass, and I think they'd be able to control the defensive backboards as well. So they would have to deal with that. Now, again, on the flip side, obviously we know offensively what those Warrior teams were able to do. Some of the things that they would be able to do in terms of whether you want to take it I'm using air quotes, old school Warriors with what Draymond could do on the short roll and him finding guys and zipping passes all over the place. They would have to deal with that. I think they would be somewhat, and I say somewhat, used to Stephen Curry zipping all over the place because those guys have to guard Rip Hamilton in practice. So I don't think they would necessarily be caught off guard by his constant movement. I think they would be able to deal with that. I think they would force the Pistons. They would put their defense to the test because they're going to make you play defense for a lot of the clock. They're going to move the ball. It's not they're not going to necessarily attack you per se in the way that Lakers team did, where Kobe just kept trying to bang his head against that wall in terms of going one-on-one. They have a more egalitarian offense based on ball movement and people movement, and those are always the toughest offenses to have to guard because if you miss an assignment or if you lose track of a man, boom, layup, boom, open player. So that Warriors team would force them to make sure that they are very detailed in terms of their rotations and things like that on the defensive end, and they would be able to exploit any mistakes that they would make. And I look at it like this because, it's, like I said, if you can get up, sizably, it would be tough for that Detroit team to come back. I don't know offensively if they could, but the thing about it, they're so good defensively. The thing about it is, one, it would be hard to build that lead, and a defensive team like that, you're always in it because they play defense and they rebound the basketball. So I don't think that the Warriors would necessarily be able to build some of these big leads. We've seen them blow teams away and put games away in the third quarter. I think they would have a tough time doing that. So in looking at it, I think I'm going to pick the Pistons in 6 for all of the reasons that I mentioned. I just think the stifling defense would eventually wear those guys down, particularly if they're playing in the rules of that era. Obviously, if we're playing by more modern rules, then that opens up things greatly for Golden State. Then that space and pace offense that they have, they'd really be able to take advantage of certain things that today's NBA affords offense. But if we're playing under regular rules, then yeah, I think the Pistons dispatch the Warriors in 6 games. But with that being said, not only what do you think of what Rasheed Wallace had to say, but what do you think? Who would win in this hypothetical matchup? Would Golden State be able to, overwhelm them from an offensive standpoint, or with the defense, the rebounding, the size, the physicality of that Pistons team, would that be too much for the Warriors? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and let's have a conversation about it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end the video. And thank you once again for spending a few moments with us. And as always, tell the ones that you love them. Peace.